what is, I hate to use the word, but it's almost criminal, but I think it's based on ignorance, is the way that so-called Egyptologists have looked at this wonderful source of wisdom that goes back for thousands of years. And all they had to say is, oh, these people worship animals, and oh my God, what kind of stupid people are they? I mean, how can you come to that kind of conclusion when these people...
Let me jump in.
Yeah, please.
I get it. Look at it from an Egyptological perspective, all right? This is what we have access to. You've got on one hand the philosophical ideas of the ancient Egyptians as represented by Ptah-hotep and all the other wisdom teachings. By themselves, those wisdom teachings give you a guidance for what is considered a right action. And there's a whole body of moral philosophy, and for that matter, political philosophy that comes out of it. The easy way to deal with that is to say, well, they worshipped animals. Then you have the cosmological ideas that you've talked about, the Hermopolitan cosmology, the Heliopolitan one, the Theban one, the Memphite one. Well, you can just dismiss that as hocus pocus.
They dismiss it as each one fighting against the other one.
That's right.
They're parts of the same thing.
That's right. But you can then dismiss its significance, even though, as we've seen, it's the basis of Greek philosophy. Then you have what's symbolized by the Book of the Dead, or Coming Forth by Day, and how it teaches persistence. How it teaches that you will continue to be judged, and you will be judged within an inch of your life, and you still have to emerge triumphant. That's a whole nother discussion. Then we have what you said about the interpretation of the story of Isis and Osiris, and all the symbolisms and psychology involved in that, and that has its own discussion. Then we have the 7 principles of Tehuti and all the power and symbolism there, and how that's the basis of success philosophy. And we haven't even finished yet, because there's another area too. When Dr. Naim Akbar wrote The Nile Valley Origins of the Science of the Mind, what Akbar did was to show that when it comes to what makes up a human being, he's since developed the idea into the community of the self. But when he first wrote about it, he talked about the importance of a ka, a ba, a kaibit, a sa, all these different elements that make up a human being. And these different elements means that you can define a human being as perhaps 7 different things, as perhaps 10 different things. And when you have Greek and the tradition of European philosophy that's developed ever since, through the likes of René Descartes, about is it physical or is it metaphysical? Is it mind? Is it body? Yeah. And you've got the ancient Egyptians saying, well, actually, it's 7 different things. It's the ka, it's the ba, it's the kaibit, it's the sa. Does that make sense? Yeah. And these principles, is Professor Naim Akbar correct to say that each of those principles is a different thing that makes up a human being, a different aspect of the self? And if it does mean that, how does that change our understanding of psychology? So can you see that there's at least 6 different ways that we can interpret ancient Egyptian thought? And there's 6 different ways we can pull out psychological principles, spiritual principles, wealth principles, success principles, persistence principles. Do you see?
Yeah.
And all of that exists within this body of knowledge. What an amazingly rich body of knowledge. Greetings. My name is Robin Walker. I'm also known as the Black History Man. I'm perhaps best known for my 2006 book, When We Ruled.
Based on this book, I'm launching a new online history course aimed at you, the adults. You could be a parent, you could be a teacher, a mechanic, cleaner, professionals, care workers, security guards, taxi drivers, kitchen workers, entrepreneurs, tech heads, lawyers, all of you. We want people from all over the world to be empowered by our content. We want you to gain mastery over your history and heritage. And you can do this by subscribing to our course. Click on the link to get this powerful, life-changing material.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what keeps astounding me, because when you get to a deeper understanding, you understand more and more how it applies to everything, and life becomes relatively simple, because when you solve your own problems internally, then you don't project those problems on the external world outside of you. But because that's exactly what all of us do in terms of our mind. The world that we see is all mind. It's interpreted as, for us by our minds. And the world that we see is not the same world that the dog sees, or the elephant sees, or maybe that the Chinese person sees the world a little bit different from the African person, and the European person for sure sees the world differently from the African person, and so on. And that's because of a mental conditioning. And all of these principles that you're talking about are extremely important. And of course the one that was the one that then shall we say is worthy of the gods and lives with the gods is the Ak, which is the light, so to speak. When you have gotten rid of all of your inconsistencies and your conditioning and so on, and you're just really light, which, as you know, that's the symbol, shall we say, of clarity, of consciousness. It's pure consciousness and energy. So yes, I'm somewhat familiar with Naim Akbar's work, and there's certain little differences in terms of which name means what. The Ba means the soul, and so on, and the Ka seems to mean more the physical energy part that doesn't seem to leave the cat, and the cat is the body that's is embalmed and so on, but the Ka seems to somewhat hover around where the body is buried, as opposed to the Ba, which becomes liberated and so on and so forth. So,
and that's where the idea of the coming forth by day is. It's your Ba coming forth by day.
Yeah.
And can you see it's the Count Dracula story in reverse? Dracula disappears before day. So you can see how other people are taking the story and twisting it to create their own ideas out of it.
Yes.
As a thank you for visiting our website, we are giving you a free copy of our exclusive 100 Black History Facts, which is in fact a taster of our course content. Make sure you leave your email address and we will send it right to you. We hope it inspires you to dig deeper into your history and heritage.
The original, wisdom is there. I think we've begun to unearth, some of it that is of extreme relevance. But what has also happened is that it's as if to say of the way in which Egyptian civilization, and I'm saying that Egyptian civilization now because they've gone away from calling it Kemet because of the Arab invasion, and it's been Arabized and so on. It's to say that doesn't belong to the rest of Africa, that didn't come out of Africa, and that the understanding that was developed and perfected in Kemet was not transmitted across the continent. I think I'm going to want us to go there next time in terms of some of that transmission. I think we started doing that a little bit in terms of Krishna and Buddha. I think I want us to do that, because I think it's important to understand that, there's one basic understanding of our humanity. And others have taken that basic understanding that we transmitted around the world, and they have divided up the world into different peoples and different territories, And of course, then there are different belief systems and different religions. And I guess we'll come back to, maybe next time we'll start with the difference between, religion and spirituality, because I think that's a useful discussion, for us to have in depth. And I think in depth, probably I won't disagree with you. But I like to focus on spirituality because I think that's something that you can do for yourself, as opposed to religion being more of a structured thing. And of course, religion, even when it has the same principles as another religion, has developed a cultural covering, shall we say, that has developed over time because of the physicality and the history of that particular place, that particular people. So that this, even though this religion and that religion may have similar basic principles, but they don't recognize each other because of the cultural overlays, and that's one of the problems with religion. But as you've said before, certainly the ethical component to religion is significant, but of course that's also a part of spirituality. How you function in society is based on the values and the ethics of, as we are saying here, it's certainly ma'at, which is honesty and righteousness and reciprocity, and so on. So I think that would be a useful discussion. And again, I want us to move across Africa. We certainly know that the Dogon were beneficiaries of Egyptian civilization. I think the Yoruba also tell us that, and I think we need to look at that because it's interesting to see migration within Africa, because most of the time we think of migration outside of Africa, and there's a tendency to disconnect Egypt from Africa itself. And I want to sort of reconnect that.
You're right. They do try to do that.
Yes. Yeah. So I enjoyed our discussion today. Look forward to the next one. So,
Very much so.
Good. Wonderful. Thanks for all the information.